The black SUV rolled to a gentle stop beneath the sweeping entrance of the Grand Meridian Hotel just as the evening sky faded into deep shades of blue. Valets hurried between luxury cars worth more than most families would earn in a lifetime, greeting guests dressed in tailored tuxedos and glittering designer gowns. Flashing cameras captured every famous face arriving for the city's most prestigious charity gala, an event attended by business tycoons, celebrities, politicians, and socialites. A long crimson carpet stretched toward enormous glass doors where golden lights spilled into the night, giving the building the appearance of a royal palace. From the SUV stepped Ethan Carter, a 36-year-old single father. Unlike everyone else arriving that evening, he wore a simple charcoal gray suit that fit well but clearly wasn't new. The jacket had been carefully pressed, yet close inspection revealed tiny signs of age around the cuffs. His black dress shoes had been polished until they shined, though years of use could not be completely hidden. Ethan wasn't concerned about appearances. His attention remained on the little girl climbing out beside him. 8-year-old Lily adjusted the blue dress her father had bought for her several months earlier. It wasn't expensive, but she looked radiant because she wore it with confidence. Her long brown hair had been neatly braided, and a small silver hair clip sparkled beneath the hotel lights. She looked up at her father with nervous eyes. "Dad," she whispered softly, "there are so many important people here." Ethan smiled warmly before kneeling to meet her gaze. "There are many successful people here," he replied gently. "But remember something. Success doesn't make someone important. Kindness does." Lily nodded, taking a deep breath before slipping her small hand into his. Together they walked toward the entrance. Some arriving guests glanced briefly at them before looking away. Others stared a little longer. Their expressions carried silent questions. Who were these two? Why did they look so ordinary compared to everyone else? Inside the magnificent lobby, towering marble columns reached toward an ornate ceiling painted with elegant artwork. Crystal chandeliers illuminated every corner with soft white light. A string quartet performed classical music while waiters moved gracefully through the crowd carrying silver trays filled with sparkling drinks and delicate appetizers. Every conversation seemed to revolve around investments, mergers, luxury vacations, private jets, and exclusive business opportunities. Ethan quietly handed his invitation to the receptionist. She examined it carefully before looking at him with mild surprise. "Everything is in order, Mr. Carter," she said politely. She handed the invitation back and welcomed them inside. As Ethan and Lily entered the ballroom, countless conversations paused for only a second. The room itself looked breathtaking. Hundreds of elegant tables surrounded a massive dance floor beneath dazzling chandeliers. Giant floral arrangements decorated every corner while musicians performed on an elevated stage. The atmosphere reflected unimaginable wealth. Lily's eyes widened. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It is," Ethan agreed. "But don't let beautiful places fool you. Beautiful hearts are much harder to find." She smiled. For several peaceful minutes they admired the decorations together. Then the whispers began. A middle-aged businessman leaned toward his wife. "Who invited them?" he muttered. His wife barely concealed her amusement. "They certainly don't look like they belong here." Nearby, two young influencers quietly laughed while pretending to admire the decorations. "Maybe he's somebody's driver," one whispered. "No," the other replied. "Drivers dress better." They both laughed. Lily heard them. She lowered her eyes toward the floor. Ethan noticed immediately. He squeezed her hand gently. "Never allow strangers to decide your value," he said quietly. She forced a small smile. Across the ballroom stood Victoria Monroe, one of the city's most famous socialites. Surrounded by wealthy friends, she noticed Ethan and Lily almost immediately. Her expression shifted into open amusement. She deliberately raised her voice. I didn't realize tonight's charity included random guests from the street. Several people nearby laughed. Another guest added, maybe the catering company brought family members. The laughter grew louder. Although Ethan heard every word, his expression remained calm. Instead of responding, he walked toward a refreshment table and poured Lily a glass of water. Here, he said warmly. She accepted it with trembling hands. Dad, why are they laughing at us? Ethan looked around the enormous ballroom. Some guests openly stared. Others whispered behind expensive glasses of champagne. A few appeared uncomfortable but remained silent. They're laughing because they think clothing tells someone's story, Ethan answered softly. One day they'll learn it doesn't. Lily nodded slowly. A waiter approached carrying a tray of desserts. Without hesitation he smiled kindly at Lily. Would you like one? Before she could answer, Victoria interrupted. I wouldn't waste those on people who clearly aren't donors. The waiter froze awkwardly. Ethan looked at the young employee. It's all right, he said gently. Thank you for offering. The waiter quietly apologized before continuing his work. Moments later another businessman intentionally walked past Ethan, bumping his shoulder hard enough to spill water onto his own jacket. He immediately turned around dramatically. Watch where you're standing. I'm sorry, Ethan replied calmly, even though he hadn't moved. The businessman shook his head with exaggerated annoyance. This is exactly why invitations should be checked more carefully. Several nearby guests nodded in agreement. Lily clutched her father's arm tighter. I want to go home, she whispered. Ethan bent down beside her again. If we leave because others are unkind, he said softly, they'll never learn anything. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is remain kind when others choose not to be. She looked into his eyes. Somehow his calmness made her feel safe again. They quietly took seats near the back of the ballroom, far from the wealthiest guests who occupied the front tables. Few people acknowledged them except a couple of hotel employees who offered respectful smiles. Around them, conversations continued as though Ethan and Lily were invisible. No one in the room knew that the modest single father sitting quietly beside his daughter carried a family name capable of changing every life in that ballroom. Within the next hour, the truth would emerge, and every person who had judged him by his appearance would wish they had shown the kindness they so carelessly withheld. The ballroom buzzed with excitement as the evening's host stepped onto the grand stage beneath a dazzling crystal chandelier. Conversations gradually faded while hundreds of distinguished guests turned their attention toward the spotlight. Behind the speaker, a massive screen displayed the elegant logo of the Ashford Foundation, one of the world's most respected charitable organizations. Cameras from television networks lined the back of the room, waiting to capture the night's biggest announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, the host said with a confident smile, thank you for joining us for this year's charity gala. Tonight, your generosity will help thousands of families across the country. Before dinner is served, we have a very special guest whose arrival marks the beginning of a new chapter for the Ashford Foundation. The audience applauded politely. At the rear of the ballroom, Ethan remained seated beside Lily, speaking quietly with her about the artwork decorating the walls. He seemed completely uninterested in the glamorous atmosphere surrounding him. Lily had recovered from the earlier embarrassment, but she still avoided looking toward the guests who had laughed at them. Victoria Monroe noticed Ethan still sitting comfortably inside the ballroom. She frowned. I thought security was supposed to remove them, she whispered to a hotel manager. The nervous manager nodded. I've already asked them to handle it. Two security officers soon approached Ethan with professional but uncomfortable expressions. Sir, one officer said respectfully, would you mind coming with us for just a moment? Ethan looked up calmly. Is there a problem? We've received concerns from several guests regarding your invitation. Without showing the slightest irritation, Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and produced the elegant invitation card. The officer carefully examined it. Everything appeared genuine. Still uncertain, he spoke quietly into his radio. Meanwhile, curious guests watched from every direction. Victoria folded her arms with satisfaction. "I knew something wasn't right," she murmured loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. One businessman laughed. "This should be entertaining." Lily looked worried again. "Dad." Ethan smiled gently. "It's all right." The security officer handed the invitation back. "Sir, would you please wait just one more moment?" Ethan nodded. "I don't mind." Before another word could be spoken, the ballroom lights suddenly dimmed. A soft spotlight illuminated the entrance. The orchestra stopped playing. Every guest instinctively turned toward the massive doors. An elderly gentleman with silver hair entered the ballroom, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. His confident posture immediately commanded respect. Many executives recognized him at once. Whispers spread rapidly. "That's Charles Whitmore, the Ashford family attorney. What is he doing here?" Charles Whitmore had served the Ashford family for over 40 years. His reputation for honesty and loyalty was legendary within the business world. Whenever he appeared publicly, important announcements usually followed. Instead of walking toward the stage, Charles slowly scanned the crowd. His eyes settled on Ethan. A warm smile crossed his face. Without hesitation, he walked directly through the center of the ballroom. Guests instinctively stepped aside. The entire room watched in complete silence. Victoria frowned in confusion. "Where is he going?" Charles stopped directly in front of Ethan. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the distinguished attorney extended both hands respectfully. "Mr. Ashford," he said warmly. "I sincerely apologize for keeping you waiting." The ballroom froze. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the musicians stared in disbelief. Ethan stood and shook Charles's hand with genuine affection. "It's good to see you again, Charles." "The board members have all arrived," Charles replied. "They're waiting for you." Lily smiled brightly. "Hello, Mr. Whitmore." Charles bent slightly toward her. "You've grown so much, Miss Lily." She giggled. Victoria's confident smile disappeared. Her face turned pale. What did he call him? The businessman standing beside her swallowed nervously. "Mr. Ashford." Charles turned toward the audience before addressing the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Ethan Ashford, the sole heir of the late Richard Ashford and the new chairman of Ashford Global Holdings." A wave of stunned silence swept across the ballroom. Several guests actually gasped. Others stared at Ethan as though they had seen a ghost. One woman accidentally dropped her champagne glass. The sound echoed across the silent room. Reporters immediately rushed forward. Camera flashes exploded from every direction. The host stepped aside respectfully. Charles continued speaking. "For the past 9 years, Mr. Ashford has lived privately following the tragic loss of his wife. During that time, he chose to dedicate himself entirely to raising his daughter instead of seeking public attention. He declined interviews, avoided luxury events, and refused to use his family name for personal recognition." Every sentence deepened the audience's shock. The billionaire heir they had imagined arriving in a limousine surrounded by assistants had been sitting quietly among them all evening. The same man they had mocked. The same father they had tried to remove. Victoria slowly lowered her eyes, unable to meet Ethan's gaze. The businessman who had intentionally bumped into him suddenly looked sick with regret. Nearby guests remembered every cruel joke they had made only minutes earlier. Some quietly stepped backward, hoping cameras had not recorded their behavior. Charles opened an elegant leather folder. Inside rested official documents bearing the Ashford family seal. He presented them to Ethan. As directed by your father's final wishes, I officially transfer full authority of Ashford Global Holdings and the Ashford Foundation into your hands. Ethan accepted the documents with quiet dignity. There was no triumphant smile. No arrogance. Only calm gratitude. The audience erupted into applause, though many clapped with trembling hands. People who had ignored Ethan earlier now hurried toward him with forced smiles. Mr. Ashford, what an incredible honor. We had no idea. Please forgive the misunderstanding. Business executives eagerly introduced themselves. Politicians suddenly praised his humility. Even Victoria stepped forward, struggling to maintain her composure. Mr. Ashford, she said softly, I'm afraid we got off on the wrong foot. Ethan looked at her calmly. He neither smiled nor frowned. He simply nodded politely. Around the ballroom, everyone realized the evening had completely changed. Only an hour earlier they had judged a quiet single father by the age of his suit and the price of his shoes. Now they stood before one of the wealthiest men in the nation, hoping desperately that he had forgotten every cruel word they had spoken.